This is for the love in you.
I appreciate everything you do.
This is for the love in you.
Hello, this is your self-love advocate, Pierre, and this is another episode of the Love Right Now show. The special episode, Healing the Black Woman, as I sit down with women that I absolutely admire and that empower me on a personal level as we talk about the state of Black women's health and where we would like to see it and any advice and solutions that we have through our practices. So today I am joined by NuNicka Epps, who I've known for a long time. We both went to San Francisco State University together, and we're both in leadership positions on campus, and she went off and was an administrator at Spelman College and started her own business, and we're going to get into all of that in just a minute. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yay, I'm happy you're here. And as I do with every show, I like to recognize a person or group of people who are self-love slain in these streets. And today, that is Mrs. Epps. Yeah, self-love slain in these streets. And so we're going to get into why in just a minute. But tell us a little bit about what you provide, what your business is, because you are a business owner, and some of the work that you do. And then we'll get into your personal self-care journey.
Well, I am the proud owner of Essential Elements Consulting, Inc. We just celebrated 13 years, and that is a one-stop event production firm. Not so much focused on just the event design, but the strategic objectives. What do you want your launch party to produce? What do you want your quinceanera to leave your family, the impression. So we focus more so on the strategic planning. And when I'm not doing event productions and strategic planning for that, I like to coach small businesses on how to not only make and sustain the money, but maintain a holistic life balance and profitability. And you can find that at essentialelements.com or through newepps.com.
Okay, love it. So basically making boss moves and encouraging others to do the same.
Yes.
Okay, I love it. So you have a very powerful testimony, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But as we are talking about Black women and in healthcare spaces, how do you generally feel the state of Black women's health is right now?
I think generally speaking, it is, I'll just say it's not a priority for us.
Yeah.
Because we keep, putting other things before our health. Be it the business, be it the family, be it the aspirations or the goals. And I think that, we just put it on the back burner. And I think that it is critical that we really kind of realign and recenter ourselves to realize that without health, those other things don't exist. So I would just say that we can do better in taking care of just being aware of signs and responding to our body when it lets us know that we're exhausted, we are not running the way we should, or not taking that time, that self-care, like you said, self-care. And I think that we can do a better job of making that a higher priority.
We're finding that more and more, as we talk about self-love and self-care, that has been a really amazing movement. I love how there's so many platforms promoting self-love and self-care, but there's still, this shame of putting yourself first because you feel like, it's everybody else is supposed to go before me.
Right.
And especially, being natural nurturers, as I call us, and then especially when you start taking on different roles in your life, like wife and mother and things like that, and just being able to balance that. And so I have to agree with you that I do feel that while there are some amazing platforms addressing this issue, and we'll get into a little bit of that too, we do have some room to grow.
Yes.
To make self-care a normal thing, right?
Well, I think when you say self-care, some of us don't equate the health piece of that. We think of self-care like sleep, drink more water, work out, or the manicure, the pedicure.
Mhm.
But when you say self-care, it's kind of like you need an additional nudge to say, oh yeah, girlfriend, that's your physical, your mammogram, your vitamins. And so I think that we have to asterisk the self-care and healthcare, because I don't think it's understood when we say it.
Yeah, and there is this, sometimes it's like this picture is painted on what self-care should look like. So I like how you mentioned like the pampering aspect,
Right.
which could be part of it, but it's not all of it,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And so, you know, as you're saying, just your checkups, you know.
I mean,
making
hair and makeup on fleek, but
Right. Organs are important too. Right. Yeah, we don't want to be good on the outside and on the inside. Yeah, man.
Exactly.
Because that will definitely eventually affect our lives, right?
Yes.
So, who was the first person who taught you how to take care of yourself as a woman?
I would say, my mother taught me certain things about being a lady, about, hygiene. But it wasn't, I think, until even middle school, high school, when I was cheerleading, that I learned those additional care things like, shaving or drinking water, or not drinking too much soda, or making sure, that you're hydrated, and just things that were at the core level of getting into a better, I guess, self-care regimen.
Yeah.
It didn't come from my home. It came from, like I said, my sports, my coaches, my sponsors, not at church, not at home, not even in girlfriend conversation when I was younger. So I feel like a lot of things now, growing up and maturing and knowing what I really needed to do, I don't think that there was ever a time or a conversation in my home or just my upbringing that really helped me focus on that.
Yeah. That came up in another sister's conversation too, like those individuals who were your mentors that probably at the time got on your nerves.
Right.
But they were really teaching you self-care.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And things that you remember to this day.
Right.
And that you apply to your life. And so shout out to the coaches, the mentors, those extra people in our lives that take that extra time to get on our nerves, but teach us how to take care of ourselves, because many of us need that, because everybody doesn't grow up with, the parents that at the time or were even taught to give that type of support to their kids. I mean, a lot of it, was like, hey, I put a roof over your head, you ate, you're good, I taught you how to be a lady, I made sure you didn't walk out looking a mess, but that's because that's what they were taught, most likely, and so it kind of continues, and so now it's time for us to have a different type of conversation and recondition our minds.
I agree.
Yeah, and so what do you feel, what do you wish you were taught growing up that maybe you weren't taught to aid you into this rites of passage into womanhood?
Okay, womanhood, we don't set aside like the recipes and the healthy eating and the boy stories. You're talking about just health, right?
Just health. Well, anything, really, anything, but I get you.
Anything. I would say, I definitely think that stress. I think if it would have been taught to me that stressing about things can impact your health, your high blood pressure. Stress is real.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, even at a young age, I was the oldest of 6 girls. The stress of just being the oldest and not wanting to make a misstep with these little eyes watching me, So I think the benefit or the impact of stress in my life and how to minimize it at an early age would have been great, in addition to health routines.
That's a big one and an important one, because stress affects every aspect of our lives. Mind, body, spirit, emotions, everything. So that's huge to be able to be taught that as a young girl, to monitor your stress. That's really big. Okay, that's awesome. We're going to dive into your story in just a moment, because your story touched me. I actually got emotional when you told me about it the first time, so I can't wait for you to share it.
Thank you.
Okay, So, as I mentioned before, when I first heard your story, I literally had to like swallow double time. I got because I was emotional listening to you, but then I was also so very motivated. You know, hearing how you advocated for yourself to get the care that you needed, and so I've been asking this question of every woman that I've sat with, and that is, have you ever felt like in any healthcare spaces that you weren't heard, and if so, what was that process for you?
So yes, I have been in multiple healthcare spaces. In short, I experience heavier than usual cycles, but I let it go on, I'll say for about a year before I did anything. I kept trying to justify it. Maybe I'm doing too much, maybe I'm stressing, maybe I'm not eating the right things. So I'll just keep getting like a heavier pad. Never went to the doctor. And when I went to the doctor, I would just allow them to do a traditional exam. I never said anything about what I was experiencing, thinking it was a phase. And so by the time I did realize that what was happening wasn't natural, it was too late. I couldn't go out in public without losing immense amounts of blood. I was basically hemorrhaging from the inside out to the point where I passed out in carpool getting my son. At the same time, I am uninsured. I won't say uninsured, but I'm an entrepreneur, both my husband and I, and we are in this healthcare battle in the marketplace, paying $1,400 a month, having a $500 copay to even go to the doctor. So you had to basically be dead in order to want to swipe that $500. So to have this going on and to realize that every time I even spoke up about it, it could be a $500 copay and then a referral and then a referral and then a referral. I just couldn't bring myself, as crazy as that sounds, I'm the only body that I have, I couldn't bring myself to continually shell out all this money. So I became more empowered at that time to really say, you know what, when I go to these doctors and they give me this clipboard and they tell me, why are you here? Do you have a headache? Do you have this? It was so generic. I began to type up, listen, for 3 months, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And when I checked into my doctor's appointments, I wouldn't even fill out their paper. I would attach my memo. And I say, when the doctor comes in, I would like to discuss this, so they can look at it before they see me. But this checklist does not equate to what I need to tell the doctor. And it was at that point that I began to use my voice and my dollar and make the most of my time with the specialist, but it was because it cost me so much. And I expected the care that I was paying for literally until I could figure out what was going on with me.
So you push the envelope to say, I'm not getting customized treatment, but that is what I need. This is not a generic situation. I already know what I've been experiencing for the last several months. Typed up your symptoms and said, hey, look at this before you even look at me.
Absolutely.
And that is, if that's not advocating for yourself, I don't know what is. So I really commend you for that. And that's an option for anybody.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I wish I could say I just woke up and I was that brave, but it took them sending me around to multiple doctors over and over again. It took them telling me I was depressed, telling me I had a stomach bug, so many different things, and me blindly believing them because they're the physician.
Did you know something more was going on the inside though? Like,
absolutely. I mean, I literally felt like my life, like I couldn't walk upstairs in my home without coughing, and it's something small like your cycle. But fast forward, after I became persistent and I began to describe what I was experiencing, a specialist was able to say, I think you should go get a vaginal ultrasound as well as an ultrasound, because I think something may be going on in your abdomen and your cervix. One appointment to the gynecologist, and they did the ultrasound. First they did the topical one and saw something the size of a grapefruit. And it had pressed up against my spine to where I blacked out in carpool, picking up my children, running with all these businesses, almost ruined a wedding for someone because I literally had pushed myself to the point where the carpool ladies had to call the ambulance, and my children were crying on the sideline while I had to be awake. So I would just say to anyone who is experiencing something, don't let it get to that point where you're getting blood transfusions and you're bleeding them out, and taking iron doesn't replenish your body. But again, remember I said I didn't even check on myself until I had experienced that 1 year.
Wow. So from the first doctor that you went to initially to eventually you did go to a specialist that said, hey, get an ultravaginal ultrasound. Right. And you would think that would have happened earlier. What was the time frame?
About 2 years.
Wow.
About 2 years, and from that 2 year period, they told me, one, I needed to change my diet. They told me that, one, I was anemic. They told me just a lot of basic cookie cutter things. But ultimately, I found out that I had about 40 cysts, and 15 of them had to be surgically removed, and one was potentially cancerous. And so,
was this before or after you had your children?
This was after I had my children. Prior to, now I knew I had an existing condition because I was told I probably wouldn't have children because I had scar tissue from an earlier abortion in my life. And being that the shame and the guilt from making that choice, anything that had to do with those organs, I didn't advocate as hard for. But you let my nose be running, or you let my neck have a crick in it. But when it came to certain things with our body or our womb or our cervix, I don't know why there is some apprehension or shame, or you don't feel empowered to say, I don't feel healthy in these places. And I'm not sure where that comes from. Maybe it's because we don't talk about it as children or when we grow up.
I feel that way. I feel that there is a lot of shame when it comes to our womb because, growing up, I know for me, it was kind of like, we don't talk about sex, don't twist too hard. And if somebody's looking at you, it's something that you did.
Right.
Don't bring that attention to you, that type of thing. Right. But this is when you're just not even knowing, or aware of those kind of things. And so that kind of sticks with you. So as, you're growing up and it's like anything to do with your womb space.
It's still taboo.
Yeah, and you're disconnected from it. Sometimes I used to feel like my womb was a whole nother person that I didn't know.
Not Sasha Fierce.
Yeah, but I didn't know her.
Yeah.
I had no relationship with her. I didn't grow up, learning to treat her as her own being and needed her own health care. And it wasn't until I became an adult and started getting into these wellness spaces and facilitating healing on my own that I realized, I have been dealing with a lot of shame around this. And so that may have a lot to do with why you said, that can wait.
Right.
That can wait.
Right.
That can wait. Because we haven't gotten to know who we are at the core, and a lot of that authentic relationship with ourselves as women has much to do with the relationship we have with our womb.
I agree. It's empowering to know, okay, you know what? I was chosen to possess the ability to birth. And even if I can't naturally birth, I can still nurture and heal and through what I've been equipped with in my womb, I can build a community, I can nurture, I can bring life to things. And so I know that now. But it's because I had that situation to where, I'm happy to be sitting here now to hopefully let someone else know that, don't wait, because mine ended with a hysterectomy, and who knows what could have happened had I been that advocate 2 years earlier.
But you did it.
I did it.
You did it, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
So we'll talk about what self-care looks like for you now, okay? And a little bit more about your business and some more tips you can give us as we're on this journey and we want to customize our care.
Absolutely.
In these healthcare and wellness settings.
Sounds good.
Yay. Okay, so thank you for sharing that story. And you literally moved into a space where you kind of found a voice within yourself and you advocated for your health. And one of the things that that happened is you had to move back home, home being Houston, and really change, you know, your whole lifestyle, life, pause on your business. Everything was impacted by this delay in diagnoses to help you get through and get to the healthcare that you needed.
Absolutely. So, you know, just living my life, and dealing with, and I shouldn't even say living my life. I was living a diminished life. You know, I was too fearful to wear colors. I was too fearful to wear, you know, to go too far from the house because I knew there would be something where I'd have this incident, right, and be embarrassed. So I just kind of began to shrink until I could deal with it. And I know people may say, well, why did you wait so long? Well, one, being an entrepreneur, we were paying into healthcare about $1,400 a month, but it was so minimal, the coverage, that for me to even have a surgery to remove the 15 cysts that could have been cancerous, I had to have 20% down before anyone would do the procedure on me. And that was 20% of my hospital stay plus 20% of the actual cost for the surgeon. So I was looking about $50,000 to $60,000 up front to even have the surgery. Not to mention the impact of what having 8 weeks to heal would do to my revenue of my business. So unfortunately, my husband was overseas working. I had to call him with a twisted face because I had a TIA, a short lapse where my red blood cells didn't circulate to my brain. And that is what ultimately pushed me to say I need to have the surgery. But 2 small children, a business, and a husband who is a backpack dad or suitcase dad, who was going to run our household for 2 months. You know, if I needed to have $50,000 up front and I couldn't work the business, my husband couldn't stop traveling and stop generating revenue. So he came home and said to me, you know, we need to short sell the house. We're going to sell everything in it because it's cheaper to just get rid of it and buy it over versus pay $12,000 to move back home. He said, and we're going to move in with my parents so that the boys can have the support they need. You can have the surgery, and I can continue to work until we get through this. And it was crushing to me because I'd been doing my business 5 years. I was doing it 7 years. I had just turned 6 figures by myself. Like things were going great. Partnerships were coming left and right. I was getting contract deals. All these movies were coming to Atlanta. They needed people to decorate sets. They were renting my things. And my husband was like, if you're dead, none of this matters. And that was hard for me. And so to leave everything that you built over 15 years, looking at your children and remembering their faces when they saw their mom slumped over in the car, at that moment I couldn't fight it anymore. And so what I've learned in that time was that, you know, nothing is more important than your health. You know, so you make the choices and the sacrifices. So here I am. It's been 2 years, you know, a little heavier in the midsection. I had to be cut from here down after 2 C-sections. So self-love comes from not only getting the healing that I needed, but embracing my new body until I can get to the place, because those muscles are jacked up. I need the woman's earth. I need to do all that.
Come on.
You know, but self-care for me is inside out. It's loving the body that I'm in now until I get to where I need to be. It's being thankful for modern medicine, where I get health and eating, but I needed a surgeon. So that for some people who think they're going to do it just holistically, there comes a point where you need the help of
when there's a delay in diagnosis, when it gets to that life-threatening side of it.
And you can always go back to your natural care, but if they can save your life and if it gets to that point, because if you don't have blood cells, there is no berries or anything that you can get that can rejuvenate your blood count to keep the oxygen flowing through your brain, through your limbs. So I'm thankful that I made it through. And I'm thankful for this conversation to let people know that the longer you delay, that you are seriously playing with your life.
What advice would you give to a woman who was in a similar situation as you? But you know, before we get to that point, you were paying for this pretty much out of pocket. And $1,400 $1,400 a month, that's a mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
you know, on top of everything else. So, you know, and it just makes me think about the woman who's in a very similar situation but has no healthcare coverage and definitely does not have the means to pay for the coverage.
Well, because the situation is so common, the weird thing about it was I did research because, I mean, even though I paid for it, we didn't have it, you know, just readily available. You know, we have a business, it was tied up. So there were, you know, clinical trials that you could have done. There were, there's some Medicare, and I think there's some Gold Star thing here in Texas or in Atlanta that wasn't available. So if I couldn't sell off my business and leverage those things, please believe I was going to try to get a gold card. So I would say that if you don't have the means or don't have the resources you think, do the research to see what can be provided to you, what type of, just what can be provided. Because there's sometimes if your condition is so rare or something where someone can benefit from in the medical field, they will at MD Anderson take your case. But you have to be diligent, you have to fight for it. And if you don't have something around you that pushes you to want to live life beyond yourself, then you should come and embrace the sisterhood of other women who have either survived it, to let them know that you're not alone, because it's tough. And then to go through all of that and fight and still have to have a hysterectomy, you know, even though I thought I was done with children, there's still something that you feel is being taken out of you that totally changes how you feel about yourself. Even though you're functioning great, and I don't think my husband's complaining because he don't have to wait for 7-8 days in between activity, but there is something with the self-love that clicks in your head that you have to constantly affirm yourself and know that you are still a woman, that you are still empowered, you are still who God made you to be. But to definitely, if you're not at that place, be an advocate for yourself early.
As soon as you feel like something is going on, as soon as you feel like you have symptoms beyond your control, and if you go to one doctor and they dismiss for whatever reason, and you still feel like something is going on, you can go to someone else.
Absolutely.
You can continue to go until you get somebody that's going to sit down and listen to you and get the proper care to ease your pain, to treat you, to make you better, healthier. And catching it as early as possible.
Don't ignore it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So you made the big move. It was a huge sacrifice. And you know, you eventually had the surgery, and like you said, you had to affirm yourself, because that keeps coming up when, you know, even if you feel like you don't want to have kids or you're done having kids, when that choice, you know, is taken, it's like, whoa. But then coming back to, but I'm still a whole woman, because you are. You know what I mean? And that's very important too, because that comes up a lot, especially when we get to talking about fertility and infertility and all those different things. So you've come out on the other side. 2 years of recovery. And now you're back making boss moves.
Something like that.
In Houston and sometimes in Atlanta. Both you're in between Houston and Atlanta. And so really you grew your business, grew your market, you know, from that. So there's life after, you know, these situations, and we're going to dive into that and then talk about how we can stay in contact with you. Sounds good.
Let's do it.
So you are more than a conqueror.
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are. And you made that sacrifice, and now you are operating your business in 2 markets. Okay. And how's that been for you?
It's been good. You know, owning an event space in Atlanta, actually owning 2, I built 7 years worth of clientele. And so there was like, I felt like I was abandoning them for a little while. But before I left Atlanta, I made sure to leave a lot of my inventory with some of my vendors that I used. And a lot of my repeat customers have these built-in kind of grandfathered packages and deals with DJs. So literally, it kind of shifted to where before I was making 80% of the profit, 20% I was paying out to staff and vendors. Now it's flipped so that I get 20% of revenue coming to me here in Houston, but the 80% is still for my team that's still there. So I was able to save that relationship with them. And then here in Houston, I've been able to focus more so on my annual women's conference,
which is amazing, by the way.
Thank you. Yes, the Littles and Strategies, we're on our 6th year, and that is a production of Essential Elements. And then the second thing with Essential Elements, I am a franchise owner of the Rice Awards. That is Rising Community Excellence. It's a nonprofit. And basically, through my work on the board there for the last 8 years, after Harvey, all of the board members were like, you know what, with all of what we saw nationwide happening in Houston, we would love for Nu to bring the Rice Awards there. So through the celebrity pool of contact, I'll be able to bring in celebrities and just a really good pool of people from the community to come here to Houston to recognize some of our local heroes. So to do that as Essential Elements is very important to me. And even though I'm not so much doing the running of an entire building, I'm still taking great care of my customers, but being able to focus on the things that have given me just an appreciation for life, even more so to recognize others and to empower women. So I'm thankful for the evolution. I wouldn't have expected it to go that way, but Essential Elements has evolved in the midst of everything I was going through in my health, and so to God be glory is all I can say.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So now, you know, while you still have your business and your teams, now there is a women's empowerment aspect to your business, much because of what you went through.
Absolutely.
And that's why I love how God works, to use your story to empower others. And that is definitely what you are doing. And I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And so how can we stay in contact with you?
You can go to essentialelements.com, and that's ESYNTIAL elements.com. On social media, it's at Essential Elements, and if you kind of want to know how I balance running my business, family, how I maintain my money and make smart fiscal decisions, you can be a part of my coaching circle, listen to our podcast, and you can visit NuEpps.com and get all of the details for all of that.
Awesome. So self-care, what does that look like for you now?
Self-care to me is kind of weird. It's kind of like after that surgery, I learned how to take a chill pill.
Yeah.
Self-care to me is now a chill pill.
Yeah.
It's to say, you know what, you have built something to where you can take care of yourself and say, no, I don't want to do that party. Or no, this is not the environment for me. Or I'm only coaching December through February. So self-care to me has gone from my health being on the back burner to I don't do anything unless I'm healthy first. I sleep, I eat, I hang out with friends, I pray, I meditate, and I'm trying to be right. Lord Jesus. The Hello Fresh is coming through for a busy girl. Hello Fresh. Hello Fresh.
That was a free plug for you all. So I'm going to need y'all to send my girls some stuff.
Yes,
That's
so,
good,
you know,
though.
I'm going to buy some healthy stuff.
Yeah,
And then you start picking up honey buns and Hello Fresh, just send it to the house. But, you know, I take care of myself. I, you know, like I said, meditate, drink water, and I make my follow-up and my annual visits.
Very
I don't put them
important.
off. I don't put
Very
them off.
important.
I used to delay. I don't put them off.
Now it's on time when you need to. And I love how your self-care regimen is so diverse because it just, you know, what we need in self-care depends on where we are in our life. And so now with 2 cities, you know, you have a built-in self-care regimen that you give yourself grace to float where you need.
Absolutely.
And I love that. And you don't do, like in your words, you don't do anything unless your health is good.
Yes.
And
Even
that
my
is,
attitude.
yeah. And that's a very good, fundamental word of advice. If your health isn't good, then let's take a pause and deal with that before we move forward, take anything on or any of those things, because we can't do nothing if we're not here.
Absolutely.
So what advice would you give healthcare providers on dealing with bias in their practice?
With healthcare practitioners, I would say insurance is important and malpractice suits are a real thing, but don't let the fear of that minimize your oath to do no harm, meaning hear your patients, meaning pull out that medical book, meaning just because it sounds like the cough you heard 2 appointments before, don't assume that it's the same cause. You know, and be open to cultural differences. And if you are not comfortable and can't provide the best care, that's what referrals are for. Be honest with your patient, be honest with your oath, and make sure that practitioners, you continue to be board certified and get the updated care so that you can be up to date on the nuances between certain conditions and how they've evolved over the years.
Very good advice. Very, very good advice. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for being on the show. Anything exciting coming up we need to know about?
Yes, on November the 3rd,
Okay.
I am doing an absolutely free lunch party and nomination party. I'm going to have the founder of the Rice Awards Atlanta to come down, and we're just going to have champagne, and I'm going to tell the entire city what the Rice Awards 2019 will be about. So if you want to learn more, you can visit riceawards.com to see the whole shebang, or riceawardstx.com. And you can meet me November 3rd in downtown Houston for a free lunch party and free champagne.
Oh, exciting! Congratulations on everything, sis.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation with me. I know you have helped some folk today when they hear this. And all of Nu's contact information will also be in the description. And I just want to thank you all for joining us for another series as we talk about the state of Black women's health as a part of Healing the Black Woman series. You have been with us on the Love Right Now show, and I just want everyone to have peace, love, and light throughout your life.
This is for the love.